Hey everybody, Nevin Gusak, your host of the Populist Patriot. I'm going to be talking about another live stream, some news back from 2020 about elements of the so-called American peace movement like Code Pink, which really is not about peace. They're more about emboldening the enemies at the expense of national security of the United States. And back in the middle of 2020, there was this international online conference called No to the New Cold War. And this was a conference that was supposed to blunt any American preparations against communist Chinese aggressive moves in East Asia and ultimately against the United States. And according to an article by John Ross, who's a senior fellow at the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies, Renmin University in China. And he was a former director of economic and business policy for the mayor of London in England. He also lived in Moscow from 1992 to 2000. And this article is from Russia Today, the Russian news agency, one of them at least, called from Russia Today, and it's published July 28th, 2020. And this No to the New Cold War conference brought together participants from 48 countries, according to this article, including the U.S., many of whom were leftist, extreme leftists, as well as communist China, big surprise, Britain, Canada, India, Venezuela, which is an ally of China and an adversary of the United States, that is the Venezuelan government, Brazil, and Russia, which of course is a geopolitical adversary of the United States as well, and also is allied to the People's Republic of China. And the report about this event was published in various propaganda organs of the Chinese Communist Party, like the Global Times, as well as the People's Daily. And this is the international conference launched an international statement, a new Cold War against China is against the interests of humanity. Of course, no mention to why China is building massive ICBMs when the world is, engaging and trading with it and everything else. Why China is making war plans against Taiwan, even though Taiwanese businesses are intertwined with China. And American businesses have become intertwined with China. Why is China hyper-militarizing so much? No discussion about that, God forbid. This conference is held on Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, and the Western participants in the conference were in part from leading so-called anti-war organizations, meaning anti-U.S. organizations. When you see anti-war, more often than not, it means they want to just shit all over the United States. So that's when you see anti-war, that's what it means. And because, look, I don't like war either, but I believe we need the best antidote to war is to be militarily prepared to prevent an attack and to be ready, unfortunately. It's just the nature of the beast. So this conference talked about a variety of issues, claiming we note the increasingly aggressive statements and actions being taken by the U.S. government in regard to China. These constitute a threat to world peace and are an obstacle to humanity successfully dealing with extremely serious common issues with confronted, such as climate change, control of pandemics, racist discrimination, and economic development. We therefore believe that any new Cold War will run entirely counter the interests of humanity. Instead, we stand in favor of maximum global cooperation in order to tackle the enormous challenges we face as a species. And they were minimizing or denying the crimes of China against religious minorities and other peoples within the borders of the PRC. You had organizations like Code Pink. This is Medea Benjamin's group from the United States. Now, Code Pink typically has been an apologist for communist China and, to a degree, Putin's Russia. They have very close ties with Cuba, Venezuela, Iraq, as well as Saddam Hussein's Iraq. uh, in Cuba. And also the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament from Great Britain was also present at the conference. CND, that is. CND is even during the open Cold War with the Soviet Union, has more often than not taken the Soviet side. During the Cold War, in an anti-NATO, anti-American position, they took a position that Britain basically should unilaterally disarm, and also the East Germans and the Soviets had a presence, an infiltration presence within CND, and there were hardline British communists that even pushed a lot and harassed a lot of non-communists within CND too as well. I think even one actually committed suicide as a result of that. So CND is a hardline anti-American group that anti-American, anti-US group that masquerades as part of the peace movement. And you had representatives of the U.S. Veterans for Peace, the European Left Party, obviously the Russians, the Chinese, and the Venezuelans. Their people represent their government's interests. And William R. Hawkins, who wrote in the publication The American Thinker from September 29, 2020, he focuses in on Medea Benjamin and Code Pink's statements and positions on that. And whatnot. So there were other activists other than Code Pink. That supported Beijing's positions. You had individuals like Jeffrey E. Brown, and he holds a joint U.S. and French citizenship. He is a member of the French Communist Party. He moved to Communist China. He also now operates Rising China Sinoland Radio, and he was present at the conference. And he was fully supportive of the Communist Chinese. He's kind of like the Tokyo Rose or Axis Sally, if you will. He felt that the so-called Tiananmen massacre was organized by the CIA. He has defended also Vladimir Putin's Russia, Iran, Cuba, and Venezuela. And there were others, and they were just defending China. They were saying that the United States was launching a new Cold War against China. That's what I read to you essentially. And this is why I oppose the far left, the extreme left. The extreme left has always taken a position that's inimical to the survival of the United States. And just because we oppose untrammeled Reaganite capitalism and plutocratic forms of government that masquerade as constitutionalism, doesn't mean that we go and say, well, we love Hitler and the Axis, or we love China or Putin's Russia. Because if China and Russia gain hegemony over the world to the detriment of the United States, I can assure you that the world will not be a better place as a result. It won't. We will be under a new form of slavery. The other extreme that radical civic nationalists oppose, which is this sort of scientifically managed forms of totalitarian control. And we must oppose it on all fronts. We must oppose Marxism, Leninism, as well as other forms of totalitarian threats internally as well as externally, without obviously triggering World War III. And a large part of that is going to come through military preparedness, where we have to be able to blunt an attack against the United States, where we have to be in a position where internal security is very important. And groups like Code Pink should be the subject of not only FBI passive counterintelligence, gathering information on them, as well as also launching counter information campaigns through congressional hearings by resurrecting the Senate Internal Security Committee and the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and the House and Senate Intelligence Committee and the Homeland Security would be the perfect case in point where the groups such as Code Pink need to be looked at. We need to look at the operations of Russia today in the United States. We have to look at the role of the CCP media like the People's Daily and the Global Times and Xinhua and other Chinese broadcast stations and their role in manipulating American public opinion. And we also have to slowly but surely wean ourselves off from any kind of meaningful dependence and trade with Communist China. They are not our friend. Milton Friedman, Ted Cruz, Ronald Reagan, Rand Paul, Richard Nixon, and Henry Kissinger, they were all wrong, tragically wrong about this notion that if we tie ourselves in with China through trade and diplomatic relations, that they'll become our friend, that the United States will prosper. Nothing is further from the case. So the bottom line is while we share with the far left the positions that we don't like hyper-interventionism in all corners of the globe, regime change, wars, etc. At the same time, we also have to realize that the best way to keep the peace is really and prevent war is through strength. We have to have a strong military. We have to have a strong capability to blunt any attack by hostile revisionist powers like China and Russia. And that pretty much has to be backed up by massive manufacturing capability and also the social unity of the American people. So I conclude this live stream. Thank you for liking it. I know there was my previous video also got a like. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll be doing some more live streams. Thank you much.